Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jeandra Lebeauf. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce actor Ron Cephas Jones of Truth Be Told.
Hello.
Hi, Ron. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jeandra. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you. It is such a pleasure and an honor to talk to you about Truth Be Told. It's an amazing series. It's so layered with such rich characters, and it's just been a pleasure to watch over these past 2 seasons. So thank you again for joining.
Thank you for having me.
What I've been fascinated by, I love shows that are centered in the Bay Area. I'm a Los Angeles native, but I have many family and many friends that are centered into that part of California. And so we're introduced to the Scoville family, particularly your character, Shreve Scoville, who is a patriarch of the family. He's in a motorcycle club and has just really been a fixture in the community. When you first had the opportunity to learn about him and build him, what were the most compelling aspects of his personality that allowed you to connect with him?
Well, that kind of developed over the first season and the second season, and how the writers were thinking about the relationship between the main character, Poppy, played by Octavia Spencer, and her father. So in the first season, we're just figuring out what that relationship is. And I think that's what drew me to it initially as well, working with Octavia Spencer, number one. And then I realized how wonderful the writing was. The character was so layered. And so it begins with this woman who is the podcaster, mystery podcaster, and her relationship to her father, to her family, the history of the family. And that's where we kind of begin and build from.
Mm-hmm. As we get to know your character Shreve and his history in season 1, we start to get a glimpse into maybe there's some health issues, maybe there's some familial trauma that they're all trying to work through with Octavia's character Poppy and her siblings on the show. What are some of the pillars, do you think, of topics that the show addresses in addition to the true crime podcast?
Family. You get a chance to see, again, through the main character, these 2 distinct parts of her life that she's trying to mesh together, her professional life and her family life. And she's revisiting her family after leaving and becoming this professional person, working with as a top journalist in one of the top periodicals and newspapers. And so she leaves that particular profession, comes into her own as a mystery podcaster. And she's one of the most popular ones. Millions watch her, listen to her show. And she's coming back home and revisiting a lot of secrets and severed relationships between her sisters, her husband, and her dad, which I play, Shreve Scoville. Sometimes it's hard to talk about it, Jeandra, because I don't want to give stuff away that people haven't seen it, so I'm trying to pick and choose the things I say because I don't want to give away too much, but yet at the same time be able to kind of describe what's happening. And so I think that side of the part of it, the family stuff, is what's starting to develop more and makes the show even more intriguing.
Absolutely. Shreve has such a tight attachment to his family. He fully embraces that patriarchal role in a way. He wants to love his daughters. He wants to be in their lives, there to help them, to support them, to protect them. What type of man is he? How would you describe him?
Very complicated, as most fathers can be. Shreve has 3 daughters, and his wife has passed away, and he's in a newly formed marriage with a younger woman. But I would just say complicated and layered. There's a rage that he carries from his past. He was in the Navy. He was a boxer. So there's a violent rage part of him, but what matches that is his ability to intensely love, to a fault to some degree. So And then on top of that, because of the boxing and the street fighting and fighting in the Navy, he developed some brain issues where right now it's being diagnosed as CTE, which, a lot of football players were diagnosed with, people with head trauma, boxers as well. So we're being introduced to that whole part of it as well. And there's not a lot that we know about between this particular disease. It's one of the few diseases that there's just not a lot of information about, because from what I can remember, part of studying is after the person has passed away to open the brain up and go into what the issues are. So it's hard to diagnose and subscribe things. Sometimes it could be Alzheimer's, sometimes it could be something else. So we're introducing that topic in as well. So that's another layer to Shreve, as well as being a community leader. He comes from a background in that particular area, Oakland, where the Black Panthers started out as a community organization to protect and serve the community, food banks and feeding children and helping people with housing and things like that. And also dealing with all the drugs and guns that were being poured into many of our neighborhoods across the nation. And so these men and women walk a fine line between being identified as criminals and being identified as community leaders. So I think that's a very, very interesting layer that the writers are bringing to, not only with my character, but with the story, and how community is involved and how we lose our communities and we're divided, and how we're desperately trying to come together to relearn how to love one another, care for one another. That's an element that I'm very, very proud of for the writers to talk about and bring up those issues without banging it over your head and being too socio-political about it. It's just these beautiful layers, and those stories come through the character and not through, oh, this is political or this is that, or it doesn't beat you over the head with it. It's very subtle, but you feel it more than it's like this ethereal thing in your head, but you just feel that element of it throughout the 2 seasons.
Absolutely. It has just the right pacing. It really gives you that kind of voyeur feeling of watching this family who love each other and they want to be each other, but they have a lot of baggage that they have to work through. And it's been particularly interesting to see that love transform in the family from season 1, where there was a number of volatile type of things still lingering at the surface, to seeing that healing begin towards the end of the season and continue into season 2. What has happened between the family that you think that has transformed this relationship between all of them from being very touchy, very a little chaotic in season 1 to a place of healing between not just your character Shreve and Octavia's character Poppy, but amongst the other ladies in the show, the sisters and everyone else in this familial unit, before we talk about the other aspects of the show?
Well, that's a great question for Octavia Poppy, because she's central to that particular question, which was, or is, she's coming home. I would call it coming home, right? She's coming back after being gone for a while and trying to figure out how she fits back in to her family. Mm-hmm. And making that decision along with her husband, who comes from, his thinking is from the other side of the tracks, and very factually based and very caring and concerned about this other element of her family that he feels is dangerous for her. So I think it's about her coming home. And then what happens is secrets start to surface, feelings started to surface, and you start to see Poppy, Octavia's character, negotiate those feelings with her sisters, with her husband, with her dad, and also with Mekhi Phifer's character, he plays a policeman, an Oakland policeman, who used to, when they were young, had a relationship with Poppy, and his name is Marcus. And so now they're older, she's coming back, he's married, he's got a daughter, but yet they're still very close. They're very good friends. And he starts to help her with the mystery on that end of it, but he's also a local guy. So I know him. And then you start to see all these little relationships that are connected, and how he's involved in our life. And I've been knowing him since he was a kid as well. So that's the impetus of how everything starts in season 2. It's set up in season 1, and then it starts to come out in season 2. And now that we're shooting season 3, everything just starts to blossom, and you just see how all these layers come to surface: secrets, things unsaid, love, anger, passion, and even death.
Absolutely. Some of the most amazing and most powerful moments for me during the show for season 2 featured you, where you have come into acceptance of the CTE and brain issues that your character has, and has become filming videos that ultimately maybe they'll be shared with your children or live on for future generations, where you describe different moments in history of incidents that have happened to you. What was filming those moments like for you? They're very powerful. They're topics that will resonate with many men in the African-American community, and they're just very, very powerful.
Man, that was some of the best for me. They were shot very theatrical. I have a very large theater background, and there was these pages of monologues where he's sitting and being filmed for prosperity. Is that the correct prosperity?
Absolutely.
To give to his daughters, so if anything happens to him, he wants them to know his story. So it's woven into the mystery, because the character that's doing it is the character that gets murdered in that particular episode. And so you see the relationship between Kate Hudson's character and my character, and you learn that she was a part of our family. So it's like these layers start to unfold, right? And in those particular times that we were shooting that, it was wonderful to be able to just memorize my pages and try to just go through it like a full monologue. So it felt very Shakespearean to me, because Shreve's character is very Shakespearean. He's a sort of heroic, tragic figure. And I was just pleased at how they wrote that. Again, I keep going back. For me, as an actor, writing is everything. You know, if you got great words, you can do great work. And so the show has wonderful writing. It gives you, as an actor, an opportunity to really do your homework, study the layers that are underneath, play the things that you can study, that you don't have to act. You know, it's a technique and a thing with words that how I work. And so it's perfect for me, because I really get a chance to in those particular scenes to do real good work, and you get a chance to hear Shreve's story, so that you can understand a bit about why he is the way he is, how he got this particular diagnosed with this, from being in the Navy, being on a ship, gambling, fighting, where the sailors would fight one another and gamble on. So he was a part of that. You get to learn about the fact that he had a brother who died, and he still has feelings about that. So you really get a chance to hear and see some of the personal aspects of this man, so that as we go along, you could kind of get an understanding of why he is the way he is. It's a part of some of the things that we don't do when we have scars when we're young, and we don't take the time to go into those scars to figure out why we do the things we do. And usually when we get older, we make a decision to either, have someone to talk with, or go to therapy, or read the literature and the material that's more psychologically driven, to get a better understanding of ourselves and why we behave sometimes the way we do. It could be from a childhood trauma. Your relationship with your father could have been abusive, or your mother, and you carry those issues with you as you become an adult. And if you don't confront them, then you continue to do the same things over and over and expect different results, which, as we know, is called insanity, you know. So, and many of us live in that place, you know. So you get a chance to kind of see that about Shreve as well.
Mm-hmm. I found that to be not only inspiring, but a really kind of a sort of like a modern touch. You know, everyone loves to self-film and take selfies and videos and social media and all of these things, but they're mostly like a highlight reel of our life. No one ever sees the dark moments,
That's
the
right.
down, the ups and downs. And by adding this component, it made me ponder, what are things I would want to tell my family, my child, in the event that something happens to me? By doing that exercise, your life is completely separate from your character, but did it invoke something in you to maybe create something like that in your personal life for your family and for your legacy? After filming those sequences, what did that invoke in you?
It invoked in me to say the things I need to see now to my daughter without having to leave a tape. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have a relationship with my daughter. She's a performer now, an actor, executive producer. But all the time growing up, I had the ability to talk to her and tell her things about me. So what that invoked in me is that I was so glad and happy that I made that turn when she was born and made a decision to make her a full part of my life, where I would tell her everything about me, you know? So there isn't much that my daughter doesn't know about my past. So I don't feel a need to say, man, I should leave this tape because I never told you this, or you need to know this about me. I mean, as we went along and as I gauged her age and her understanding of comprehension, then I would just tell her things about me. And we did a lot of things together, you know, as far as social things and work. And like I said, because of that, she became a tremendous actor, and now she's making some power moves herself. So, but to answer your question briefly, that's what it invoked in me. I was just so glad that I didn't feel the need to say, well, I should leave a tape or write a letter to tell you the things that I never told you, because most of the things that about me, I've already told my daughter, and then it continues, you know? So yeah, talk to your children.
Absolutely. It was very powerful because it gives them the opportunity to ask those questions that they may not have. If you leave it to them after you've gone, they're left with 1,000 questions. And
That's right.
oh, that was very powerful. And I really enjoyed that very much. Another thing that was compelling to me, we discussed this in a previous conversation about the biker culture that is in the Bay Area, in that area and we don't see that attributed much to the African-American community, just biker clubs and that in general. Was knowledge of these types of gatherings new to you, or was that something you were fully aware of and was thought, wow, this is a nice touch to have this in here?
Yeah, it's national. It's not regional, it's national. I grew up in New Jersey and New York, and I remember, I'll tell you this brief story. My mother and father had a little store, and across the street from the store was a social place, like a bar hall where they would give dances and things like that. And that place was one of the places where the East Coast Black motorcycle clubs would come to for an annual event. I lived on a street called West Broadway, and it was a winding hill. It was like winding, and it kind of curved. And on those evenings, that whole street was just lined with bikes all the way down, at least, I would say close to a mile of just beautiful motorcycles. So, and this was when I was a kid, and our parents would let us stay up late just so we can watch them vroom, vroom, and the whole sky was filled with that motorcycle sound. And it was such a fascinating thing to see as a Black kid, and they were all Black and Black men and women, women and men, women on the front, men on the back. I mean, it was just really fascinating. And that's indicative of what this motorcycle club is in Oakland, and one of the original areas where they were very prominent and very community oriented. And you felt safe when you heard those bikes, that you just felt safe. These men and women were tough. you know, and then many of them were family people. They had children, nurses, school teachers, council people, aldermen. Every walk of life was a part of those biker clubs. They weren't just rebels. They were people from all walks of life, but they loved the chopper culture, which is these men and women would build these bikes. They would buy some parts, or sometimes they would buy them, but they were basically put together, and that's what the word chopper is, chopped up pieces that they would put together and make these original looking, beautiful sort of bicycles. Some of them had beautiful lights and stereos on them, and it's just amazing, the craftsmanship and artistry that goes into that. So it's so much more than the surface of what you see. And again, it's craftsmanship and artistry and passion, and that's what most people don't know. And this series is not about a lot of people on bikes roaming around. You very seldom see us on bikes. Mm-hmm. It's about the culture of it, and that's what you get to learn. It's not like, you know, oh, everybody's riding around and it's the tough thing and the fighting, and it's not that kind of culture. It's community leaders and community people that are, and that's what you see in this.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about being young and feeling that sense of protection. And that's exactly what Shreve and everyone who's a part of this social club provides to the community. I love that there's a line in season 1 where Tammy Roman says something. It's when Shreve is going in for testing for his head, and she says, you know, he's larger than life. I remember when I saw him, he was larger than life. What do you think, if you could get into the mind of the people who surround Shreve and are in this, when they look at him, what do they see, and what does he mean to the community, to his family, and all those people around him who he's offering protection, love, and history and insight to?
Leadership. You know, leadership. All of us, when we are young, we look for leadership. Sometimes we find it in a friend, an uncle, a granddad, sometimes in our parents. But that's where it starts. We look for leadership from our parents, first of all. And a lot of us may not be fortunate enough to get it from our parents. Sometimes we find it in the streets, and sometimes it's negative leadership, or it could be positive leadership. You know, it's when a young man takes an interest in a boy or girl who's good at sports, and maybe they're part of a sports club. So they give that child an opportunity to come and help them learn how to make their game better, and they become mentors. And that's who Shreve represents. But then there's this other layer to him because of his own circumstances that pulls him where he's labeled something else, a criminal, and many of our community leaders are labeled that way by the status quo, you know. And then he has a dark side that reveals itself every now and then. So there's a balance that he's constantly trying to negotiate with. And being a community leader comes with, you know, a lot of dangerous people that you have to deal with, you know. And that's the dichotomy of our communities, right? When we lose control over our communities and someone else controls, i.e., you know, police come in and shoot our children and, you know, lock us up for things that we don't deserve to be locked up for. We're stopped more than most. So that's the whole idea, right? When you talk about community and losing communities and losing families, you lose the fabric of what makes us strong. So then we become weak and we become individual. It's like divide and conquer. And Shreve and the MC in cities like Oakland and Chicago and New Orleans, we're all continuing to battle. Even through Black Lives Matter, we're desperately trying to hold on to our communities and our families and rebuild so that we can continue to be strong and help ourselves and not destroy ourselves. So a lot of that part of the relationship between Shreve and Poppy is indicative of that. It's rebuilding that intense love and family. and then that extends into the community. And it's beautifully written because, again, Jeandra is layered. So it doesn't feel like someone's banging you over the head with this political message. It comes through the fabric of the relationships. And then you start to see why, when, who, and where. And it's just beautifully written. And so those are the things that pull you in, you know. And then you have the craftsmanship of the actors that are involved. Everyone, you know, works similarly in that we realize that there's a beautiful story to tell here, and we're all very proud of wanting to honor that.
Exactly. I love, particularly with Shreve, it's redemptive without the story being a redemption story or an underdog story. We can almost see these characters undergoing that in real time. And right. It feels so much more natural to a flow of what life is really about, instead of, oh, we're going to wait till a whole season to see, oh, they're going to reunite and he's going to be friendly with his daughter again. But it's a real time thing happening. That's right.
I call it non-formulaic. So you have formulaic writing, you know, where you can kind of predict what's going to happen, right? You know, signals are given. It's just very formulaic, where you have other stories that are very non-formulaic. And so it throws you off, or you go, oh, I didn't see that coming, or, you know, oh, what did he say? And, oh, that's because he said before then, remember the scene he said, and then you start like a puzzle. You start to piece these relationships and these stories, and it's just, it makes it enthralling to watch, you know?
It is beautiful. I have enjoyed this season, many moments over the course, particularly the intimate conversations between Shreve and Poppy made me really lean in and really want to fully feel what they're conveying to each other. And I thought you and Octavia just did such beautiful work together, in addition to the scenes that I mentioned that were of monologue of you speaking to the camera, just such really beautiful work. And I've enjoyed you tremendously.
That's a big kudos to Octavia and Nichelle. After season 1, they came in with season 2 and really together gave me an opportunity to be involved with the storyline, and in particular, the relationship between Shreve and Poppy. And so together, those two allowed me an opportunity to be more involved in the storyline, but also in developing my character to give him more interesting things and more layers. So I attribute that to Nichelle and Octavia, and am ever grateful to both of those women for giving me that opportunity.
Well, it is wonderful. I have enjoyed this conversation with you tremendously. For those who haven't had a chance to check it out, or maybe have seen season 1 and are now just beginning season 2 in anticipation of season 3, 3 words to describe Truth Be Told. And it's 3 words too.
Oh, wow, that's a hard one. Well, you got me on that. Let me, 3 words. Truth be told.
And there it is.
Yeah,
and there it is. And the truth be told is, families are complicated. Owning a business are complicated, and familial relationships are always complicated and ever evolving. Well, I thank you, sir. This has been an honor of me to speak with you. This is a fabulous show. I encourage everyone to become involved with it, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Jeandra. Thank you again. We'll do it soon.